So the last fly I published was a Renegade, and in my head, a Renegade and a Bivisible go together. Bivisible was developed about 1926, and the Renegade sometime between 1928 and 30. So I think they're related. So here's a Bivisible. Take a look and tell me in the comments if you think it's related to the Renegade.
Another fly for your box from Father's Fly Shop.
I've just had a few Renegades, and anytime I tie the Renegade, I always think about the dry fly, the Bivisible. I think the Renegade owns a kind of debt to the Bivisible, and the Bivisible was invented a couple of years before the Renegade, somewhere around 1926, and then the Renegade is about 28, something like that. So I start out with the standard comb that I use. I'm going to put the curved, the concave, or the dull side of the feather toward the hook shank, and I'm going to start the feather right at the end of the shank before the shank starts to bend. And so I'm going to bring the thread back up to about 2/3 of the length of the shank, and then this, by the way, the Bivisible is tied with brown hackle, and then I'm going to pull out and grab hold of the feather with my hackle pliers and start the wraps over the shank. Breaks off, hook it up again. And so I just want to wrap the brown feather with the shank, up the shank, touching wraps. I mentioned on the Renegade, some people strip what winds up being the top side of the feather because it keeps bare feather against the shank and tends to make the barb stand out. And some people think the fly looks better. Also takes twice as many wraps, uses twice as much material. And the bad thing is, I think when the fish see it, they don't know the difference. All right, so about 2/3 of the way up the shank, maybe a little further with the brown, and then we're going to come and we're going to tie off. And then snip it with just the tips of the scissors or snips. Okay, and then now we're going to take a white feather and prep it. And I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but if you look at a feather, you can see that you have kind of a webbing in here, kind of a looks more filled in. On a brown feather, it'll look kind of brown. This is called webbing. And you'll notice on the feather that a lot of these feathers will start larger and taper down, but we want to clip off just about to the end of that webbing and clip off any taper. So we want to get to the point where a good dry fly feather is going to have pretty much even hackle. throughout its length. And then again, the way I prep these is to cut a little bit of a cone. And I usually cut just a little more on the top than on the bottom. And then bring this in here and get a, whoop. Get a wrap over the stem, and then I want to wrap back against the other wraps before I come forward. Good time to take out any extras. And I normally put hackle pliers on. Man, I probably need to this time. But if the feather's long enough, I just want to wrap this, touching wraps up the shank toward the front of the hook till I get right up behind the eye, and then tie off. Take the tips of my snips and just snip the. Now we just pull everything back and quick whip finish. And if you want to add some head smidge, you can do that. Clean up any stray hairs, and that's a Bivisible.